Great, so thanks for joining everyone. It's nice to see some familiar names and faces. We appreciate you coming on today. So I think most of you probably know who I am. My name is Chris Marion. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at CAP Management. And today we're going to be presenting the great work that our wonderfully talented team of graduate students from CU Boulder have been working with us on for the last year. That's what we consider the first ever sustainability scorecard and guidebook for the HOA industry. So I thought I'd just give a little bit of background on the project before I hand it over. So I've been with CAP for just 2 years now. And when I first started, we really focused on kind of the environmental sustainability opportunity in our industry. So that really got started with water conservation projects, especially on irrigation systems and kind of the low-hanging fruit in terms of HOA properties and kind of optimizing water use. As we continued on that path, we sort of understood HOAs in kind of a more holistic way and kind of considered other things like financial sustainability and the importance of having the financial capacity and planning to take on some of these larger projects. And that naturally kind of led into social sustainability and what it means to build a community and make a healthy neighborhood. And, you know, one of the things we wanted to do as a company was to sort of provide this information and be the subject matter experts on all of these various topics. And we had some great examples that were sort of siloed in the industry. We had great examples of communities saving water or, you know, promoting energy efficiency initiatives. We have examples of communities that have very robust financial planning, and we have other examples of communities with social committees and, you know, event planning and that sort of thing. And so one of the goals of this project was to kind of bring all of those aspects of sustainability into sort of one comprehensive framework and look at communities really as a whole and understand how we can kind of address community building, sustainability, financial health, all kind of under one initiative. And so Chris Krigler, the owner of CAP, and I engaged with the Masters of the Environment program, which is a master's level program from CU Boulder. Naturally, it's a really great fit for kind of the scale that we're working. The program that many of the students are in is called Urban Resilience, and before that it was called Sustainability Planning and Management, which sort of had a kind of a hybrid approach between a kind of an urban studies, urban planning, urban and regional planning. And the students that we worked with have done just a great job at bringing that perspective into our industry and have produced some really great deliverables, not just for us as a company, but we're hoping to openly share that with the rest of the industry and industry partners that we've made along the way. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our capstone team, and then at the end of their presentation, we'll sort of hop back on for questions and answers. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And Andy, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Chris. I'm just going to share my screen. All right, can everyone see the presentation? Great.
All right, so I'm gonna get us started with introducing this collaborative project between CAP Management and the Masters of the Environment program at CU Boulder on sustainability in the HOA industry. So just a quick run through of the presentation. I'll give a little bit more background on our team, the program that we're in, and the project at large. And then my teammates will give us a more thorough run through of the sustainability assessment and the HOA Sustainability Guidebook. So again, just to introduce ourselves, my name is Kayla Zacharias. I'm studying urban resilience and sustainability in the Masters of the Environment program, as are my teammates Kaylee Fallon and Andy Gillespie. Spencer King is also in the program, but studying sustainable food systems. So this is an innovative interdisciplinary professional master's degree that equips students with the knowledge, skills, and expertise they need to address the complex environmental challenges of the 21st century. Rather than defending a thesis, we work on a year-long capstone project with a local business. And Kristen mentioned this, but he is also a graduate of the MENV program, so that's sort of how we initially made the connection. But like he mentioned, CAP wants to make sustainability a priority and essential part of their business model. So it's been our mission for the last year to help them figure out how to best do that. And one of the things that really drew us to this project was the opportunity for impact in the HOA industry. There are about 4,500 HOAs in the Denver metro area alone, and about a quarter of Americans live in HOAs today. This makes up a huge portion of the residential landscape of the US. And although the HOA industry hasn't historically been thought of as leaders in sustainability, we see a big opportunity to change that. The unique governance structure of HOAs can be used to implement sustainability practices, and there's also an opportunity to scale up. If all HOAs made at least some sustainability upgrades, we could achieve significant reductions in water use, energy use, and greenhouse gas emissions. So the purpose of the project is to identify opportunities to improve sustainability in the HOA industry and give CAP management the tools they need to be leaders in the field. We want other HOA management companies to be able to look to them for examples for leading in sustainability. As for the deliverables of the project, my team will talk a little bit more in depth about these in a few minutes, but I'll just briefly introduce them. These include an assessment to help CAP understand where an individual community is doing well and where they could stand to improve on sustainability measures. And then the guidebook is an educational tool to help HOA communities improve their sustainability. And it's important to note that we're not just talking about environmental sustainability here, we also discuss the need for financial and social sustainability as well. And although you might think that a few changes in one community might not be significantly impactful, if we can implement these changes in HOAs across the country, the impact could be wide-reaching. But it's not just about the industry at large. There are several benefits for individual communities. Our recommendations can help HOAs function more smoothly, be more socially cohesive, and financially sustainable. And with that, I'll hand it off to Spencer to talk more in depth about the sustainability assessment.
Thank you, Kayla. So as Kayla mentioned, one of our major deliverables for this project is the sustainability assessment. And the assessment will establish a baseline for sustainability in a community, rather than operate against a standard, which is the typical way that an assessment would work. So the reason for this is twofold. First, the field of sustainability in regards to HOAs is still new, and a standard metric for sustainability doesn't yet exist. Second, because of the wide variation between HOAs, from apartment buildings to condominiums to neighborhoods of single-family homes, a direct comparison is difficult to calculate. So rather than being tested against a sustainability standard, an HOA community will be comparing themselves year over year, comparing themselves to themselves. So again, there hasn't been a lot of work done in the space of HOA sustainability, at least in determining these objective metrics about sustainability. So because of that, our team had to figure out what the most salient and accessible elements of sustainability are and how to measure them. So that began with research. There are some assessments and certifications out there already, like the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design certification, or LEED, which was developed by the US Green Building Council. And that has a neighborhood-specific assessment, but for this assessment about HOAs, we needed to get a lot more granular. So this led us into interviews with sustainability professionals who helped us identify and refine indicators and metrics for sustainability. Finally, we piloted the assessment with a handful of CAP's HOAs to determine what aspects needed to be further refined and edited in order to get the best possible version of the assessment ready to go. As with other sustainability assessments, like LEED, which I just mentioned, The assessment isn't a one and done kind of deal. The needs of HOAs and the world at large are changing as we're moving into the future, and the assessment will need to be updated and adapted to reflect those changes. So these edits and updates will help the management company better understand the state of sustainability in the HOA. And we recommend that 2 to 3 board members be present while taking the assessment. And this is because while most of the questions are very straightforward, some of them do require a little bit more deliberation and discussion in order to get the most precise answer possible. We also recommend that you set aside 30 to 45 minutes to fully complete the 99 question assessment. Again, this is just to give you ample time to answer all the questions as thoroughly and thoughtfully as possible. And with that, I will hand it off to Kaylee.
Great, thanks, Spencer. So as Spencer mentioned, most of the questions on this assessment are very straightforward. Most of them are yes or no answers, qualitative questions. There's no crazy calculations that you'll need to do. But you will need to have the association's water bills for the past year in order to complete the full assessment. And if you don't have those, there's no worries. The questions will have like an I don't know or a not applicable answer that you can click on. But if you want to complete the survey in full, you will need those documentations. And I will just point out that the survey or the assessment is through SurveyMonkey. It's an online platform. It's very user-friendly. You just click through all the questions, and then when you get to the bottom of the page, you hit next. And so when we did pilot this, like Spencer mentioned, it's been taking on average about 30 minutes to complete all 99 questions. So there are 3 broad types of questions in the assessment. These really match with CAP Management's 3 pillars of sustainability for HOAs. There's social, so these types of questions focus on community building and governance. Financial questions, which revolve around how well funded is your reserve and what types of budgeting practices has the HOA been involved with. And then environmental questions, and these range from energy conservation, water conservation, and waste management. There are 99 questions in total and 8 total sections. Each section has about 10 to 15 questions, and the sections are community, governance, finance, building management, waste, water, energy, and transportation. And like I said, most of the questions are really easy to answer. There's no crazy quantitative calculations. And all you have to do is answer the questions to the best of your ability, even if you don't know an answer. So we'll just dive into a few sample questions so you can get a feel of how the questions are worded, what the answers might look like, and kind of start to think of like maybe how your community might answer these types of questions. So a sample question here in the community section is, does the HOA host social events? So again, we're kind of getting at that community level aspect. Obviously in COVID times, this doesn't apply, but you can answer this pre-COVID if you would like. And that's just getting at the social capital. How does the community interact with its residents? And then here are 2 sample questions for governance. Are all the board member positions filled, and are there multiple genders represented on the board? So the governance section really gets at that fairness and equity piece. What does your board look like? How does your board operate? And where is there room for improvement on those operations? And then we have a finance section. Like we said, one of CAP's pillars is financial sustainability. It's super important to the health of an association. So we have, does the operating fund have a total balance that could pay for at least 2 months of regular operating expenses? And according to the reserve study, what % funded is the HOA? So these questions get into the reserve fund and the budgeting. I do want to point out that there is no right or wrong answer. So just answer these questions to the best of your ability. You're not getting penalized if you answer that your reserve study is less than 30% funded. This information is just to get CAP or your management company the best information about your community. And the more information that you give your management company, the better they can serve your association and kind of analyze the association's wants and needs and their baseline. Where is your association at? Where's the room for improvement? And like I said, the questions for the environment section cover energy efficiency, water conservation, waste, recycling, compost. So we have, is there a residential compost pickup available for the community? Does the HOA have an energy efficiency committee? So these are the types of questions that those environmental sustainability questions will be getting at. And this is really like a deeper dive into like what your association kind of sees itself, or where your association sees itself going into the future. So a lot of these questions have an answer that you can click on that says, no, we don't have an energy efficiency committee, but we're interested in that. And you can click on that, and that will really help you as a board and your association, as well as your management company, see, okay, so we don't have this committee, but we're really interested. What are the next steps? How can we implement this project? How can we implement this committee and really take action on these sustainability initiatives? And then here is the sample question that you will need those water bills for. As I mentioned earlier, you just need to type in the total indoor and outdoor use for the last calendar year. If you don't have access to that information, no worries. There is a section at the bottom there that says, just explain why you don't have access to that. And again, I guess I just want to repeat that. Try not to default to, the I don't know answers or the not applicable answers, because the more information that you provide, again, the better you can reflect and assess on your own community, and the more information that you'll be able to give to your management company to help them help you achieve your goals. And with that, I will turn it over to Andy.
Thank you, Kaylee. So when we were developing this assessment, we cut a section out that more accurately gets into assesses energy. So this additional energy efficiency assessment can be taken in supplement to the main assessment. So the energy efficiency assessment adds a more calculation component that calculates energy use intensity. And for those who don't know, energy use intensity is the energy use per square foot of the property. So in order to do this part of the assessment, it requires the previous year's electricity and gas bills, as well as the square footage of buildings that the HOA board is responsible for paying for. So why do this additional assessment? It can help your community establish a more accurate baseline to track energy usage. And if done annually, you can compare your energy changes from previous years. So ask CAP for if you desire to do the energy efficiency assessment. So why should your community take the main assessment at all? First off, sustainability initiatives can lead to cost savings, especially in the long term. For example, the Shadowwood community in 2014 upgraded many of its units with water efficient faucets and fixtures, which ended up saving them around $24,000 per year in water costs. And on the environmental side, it allowed them to reduce 30% in indoor water usage and save 3.6 million gallons of water. Also, this assessment can help you create sustainability targets. When your community has more concrete targets and goals, it can help your HOA prioritize which sustainability initiatives are easily implementable and which ones you should plan and save for more long-term expensive upgrades. Also, this assessment can help your HOA board and CAP management better understand the dynamics of your community. So this is extremely important, especially for CAP, because if they understand your community's needs better, they can better help you and serve you in your sustainability journey. So this assessment can be your first step on that sustainability journey and can help transition your community towards a more sustainable future. So in regards to the guidebook, we developed the guidebook to complement the sustainability assessment. So after your community takes the assessment, you can learn about what sustainability strategies and techniques that your HOA can implement. So the guidebook covers all the same topics as assessment. However, it goes into further detail, as each chapter is an overview and educational information for several subtopics, also recommendations for sustainability actions, resources, and we also highlight a couple of relevant case studies of real HOAs that have implemented sustainability strategies. So the guidebook is written towards an HOA board. So these strategies and recommendations are designed so an HOA board can reasonably implement them. However, if anyone's interested, if an interested resident or industry partner can easily understand and read it and could find it useful as well. So CAP plans to send out copies of the guidebook directly to its board members, industry partners, and any interested residents early next year. And the guidebook as a whole will be available for free. And also each chapter will be individually available as well. And this guidebook will live on CAP's redesigned website. So please reach out to CAP management for help with any planning or implementation of the sustainability actions from the guidebook in the future. So we'd like to thank you all for attending, and we're going to open it up now to questions.
Awesome, thanks guys. So yeah, I'm scrolling through, kind of the list of participants here, and we have a great group here today, and we'd love to hear some different perspectives. So just so you all know, we have several board members who are, currently serving as volunteers on their community's HOA boards. We have some HOA industry veterans who have been in the industry for many, many years. And it looks like we also have several sustainability professionals too, and who are involved with designing sustainability programs and initiatives kind of at the community, city, or municipal scale. So we'd love to hear your perspective and any thoughts, comments, suggestions on how this kind of fits into to your world. So go ahead, and I think what we'll just try to do is just kind of politely unmute yourself and chime in. There might be a little bit of overlap, so thanks for everyone's patience.
Hi, thanks Spencer, Kaylee, Andy, and Kayla. This is great. I just had a quick question. So it looks like the guidebook provides recommendations for HOA operations predominantly. Are there other strategies outlined in the guidebook that would help HOA boards encourage their residents to also adopt green practices?
Yes, yes, definitely. We have a couple, in many of the sections, we have a little educational component with kind of ideas on how to engage your residents more. I think a couple of the highlights are really to have good communication lines with the HOA's residents, because I know many HOAs have renters or non-owner people living within your HOA, and from what we've heard, some HOAs don't even know who they are or have a way to contact them besides just knocking on their door. So I think one of the main things in order to encourage more sustainability within your HOA community is to have a good communication set up to begin with. If anyone else wants to chime in.
Yeah, I can add, I think the community section of the guidebook really highlights great ways to, like we said, build that social cohesion, communicate with residents, get residents to know each other really well. And you can use those avenues to also promote sustainability projects and initiatives. So there's some really great overlap between sections within the guidebook that really, I think, flow together in order to promote, residential education and promoting that those sustainability behavior changes within residential homes.
I'll add to that too that a lot of the points that we wrote in the guidebook have to deal with creating a culture of sustainability within a community, particularly about like creating a culture of reuse rather than just sending things directly to the landfill, having a system where neighbors can share and reuse items that would otherwise go to waste.
This is Abby Barnes. I'm wondering, we have a very multicultural community, and do these points and activities and so on, is this going to appeal across multiple cultures?
We hope so. There's a section dedicated to diversity in the community section. So we really try to emphasize there how board members can act to bring residents together, and really to make sure that everyone and the people from every background within the HOA feel welcome. So we're really proud that there's a diversity and equity considerations within the guidebook.
Is there anything about creating social norms within the community?
So there is a little bit. I guess the answer to that is yes and no. So we did look at, the strategies for behavior change, and that obviously social norms is a huge part of that behavior change. In the energy efficiency section specifically, there are little pieces of that, and like how you can encourage residential behavior change through like educational flyers and things like that. The great thing about HOA communities is a lot of them are close knit, right? And so if you see your neighbors, recycling, or your neighbors doing something, then that kind of encourages you to do it, and kind of this domino effect where social norms are created through that. So hopefully what we're thinking is that since the guidebook is aimed at HOA board members, it'll start from them, and as leaders in their community, they'll create those social norms in their community for these sustainability initiatives, and that will hopefully trickle down through the residents and just create, like we said, this entire culture for your community of sustainability, starting with the HOA board members who are the leaders in the community.
Yeah. Just to add on to that as well, is that I feel that many residents sometimes, while they may be sustainably minded, they feel they don't have the power to inflict greater change on its community. So that's why we hope that like the HOA boards can also adopt this as well, and kind of begin to foster that inclusive culture where if a resident wants a composting program, that their HOA board would be receptive and as well. So just to have hopefully to create a more inclusive culture where ideas like this can be thrown around.
Because one other thing to add too on the creating these norms is how the board can operate. And a lot of times HOA boards will have significant change year over year, and within a couple of years, what was important to the board at one time is no longer important to that iteration of the community's board. One of the things that some of these tools can do is there's having some structure to that decision making, and having some metrics and targets that you can work at can hopefully be sort of passed on to the next group of decision makers, so on and so forth. So that could be another way to explore not only the whole community, but just how the board sort of goes about their business as well.
I have a question as to how it might approach the financial side of things. Does it prioritize or value the different actions that can be taken? Because associations have to work within budgets, and at some point it's not about the social norm aspect, it's about how much money there is. It comes down to dollars and cents. So does it give the information in some way that they can work through that with the property manager?
Yeah, so the guidebook does have a whole financial section, and it gives out pointers as to like looking at those income statement sheets, how to identify red flags. And if you can identify those red flags early, then you can avoid, massive like defaults in your budget. And so the assessment really works well with that, because the assessment allows the boards to reflect on their state of finances. I think a lot of times, it's like, oh, we don't want to look at that, or it's hard to pay attention, or it just goes over your head. And so if you take the assessment, really sit down and reflect on your finances, and you can work with CAP or your management company, your property managers, and say, okay, great, this is where we're at according to the assessment. Here's, our state of the reserve funding. Here's this, this, and this. And then once you have that baseline, you know where you're at, you can look at the guidebook that has information on proper budgeting, how to identify those red flags. And then that also goes really well with these sustainability initiatives, because a lot of sustainability initiatives save money in the long run. So while they may cost more up front, you're saving money down the line. And so if you can properly budget for that, then you're saving money. So to answer your question, yes, there's definitely a big financial component, and we did recognize as a team, like you said, that it's about finances first, because a lot of times associations simply just don't have the funding. So we knew we had to address that before we could address, sustainability projects. If anyone has anything else to add to that.
Well, Kaylee, just to piggyback off of that really quick, when you're looking at the guidebook or even the scorecard to begin with, the survey, who would you say that well, I guess you could separate those. The guidebook first. Who would you say that the main audience is? Is it the board in and of itself? Is it maybe one or two champions on the board for sustainability? Is it the residents within the HOA? And then a second question on top of that, who would you see for the guidebook and for increasing your score on the scorecard? Who would you see as your main partners for CAP management? Being that CAP is in a very unique position that they are the property managers. But who would you see in terms of implementation? Who are the biggest partners?
I can start. So the guidebook, the audience for the guidebook is the board at large. I think any board member should be able to pick that up. And originally we had thought about gearing it toward residents and board members, but it just became a little convoluted, and we wanted to make it more direct. And we also, had the idea that board members would be able to create a culture that would filter down for residents. As for the assessment, I would say it depends how large the board is. We recommend that 2 or 3 board members sit down to take the assessment, just so they can pool their knowledge. So I would say in that case, it'd be like a couple of board leaders or whoever wants to take the charge on that. And as for implementing changes with the guidebook, what we really want the board members who use it to partner with CAP or whoever their management company may be, so they can really sit down together and figure out how to implement those changes well. So we really want to create like a collaborative working relationship between board members and their management company.
Yeah, and I'd say, the assessment or the scorecard really gives us a place to, as the management company, to start identifying who those strategic partners would be for an HOA board. And it really depends on, what the results of that scorecard are and what goals the community is trying to meet. So, Tyler is, working at the municipal level and has many sustainability programs through his jurisdiction, and it very may well be that brokering a relationship between, a Denver water program or a program in water conservation around Highlands Ranch or Excel Energy might be, our place in that. There's so much good work being done around sustainability in the Denver metro area. We don't need to reinvent the wheel on a lot of these things. It's just more so of helping the board understand what's available to them. So that's kind of just a little bit of insight into how we as the management company would approach, kind of moving forward and actually moving the score on the assessment.
To add to that too, there's a lot of opportunities specifically with HOAs to use that collective power to enhance an opportunity more so than just like a single family neighborhood that is not in an HOA. So if, for example, a single family home neighborhood wanted to implement door-to-door compost pickup, where that initially might only be offered to individuals, there might be some opportunities to build a relationship where you can get, a group bulk discount, and like leveraging those types of relationships where there is collective buy-in by multiple individuals in multiple families. There's some big opportunities to save costs and implement sustainability measures in one fell swoop.
Yeah, that's a good heads up. I think, when hearing Sir Thomas Riggle's question earlier, I think what he was alluding to was the like community-based social marketing technique, and being that technique has widely been accepted in the sustainability field for over a decade now. It seems like that market, or that target market, would be the residents, rather than the board members. I mean, if it were the board members, it would be training the trainer kind of thing, training them on how to implement community-based social marketing, I guess. And so that's kind of a fascinating question, is just like locating, and depending on who's presenting the scorecard or who's presenting the guidebook, what role does everybody play in that? And Spencer, I think you touched on it earlier when you said, hey, we're not, as CAP, we're not grading you on a sustainability scale, right? Like a grade on what CAP management's goals are, more so than we're grading you against yourself year over year. I think that's paramount in the introduction of it. And I love how you put that.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for all the questions. I've got a couple other ones. So yeah, Capstone team, I know you guys put a lot of effort into phrasing the questions, a lot of thought into how the wording should be in order to kind of remove bias, but also I know there were some other sort of intentions behind the whole art and science to crafting those questions. I think some of the sustainability professionals on the call might be interested to hear how you guys went about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, this has more to do with the content of the questions than the phrasing, but our biggest consideration throughout all of this was, what do board members like have the information and knowledge to answer? Because like we drew a lot of inspiration from existing sustainability assessments for like corporations. So we had a lot of information, and we had to really make it succinct and make sure that board members would be able to answer these questions. We also wanted to include an educational component in the questions in case board members might not be familiar with the concept that we're presenting. So we were really careful to include an educational component, but not say like what we think the answer should be. We wanted them to be really open-ended and give board members the opportunity to like share their thoughts. So we were really careful to include an educational component so that everyone knew we were talking about, but not to have them lead the person who's taking the assessment in any particular way.
Remaining as objective as possible when phrasing questions proved to be difficult occasionally, especially when trying to avoid any sort of value judgment words. And that goes the same for the guidebook as well, when trying to avoid saying like, composting is a great way to avoid putting food waste in the landfill. Well, saying a great way can be occasionally misconstrued as being a value judgment. So avoiding any sort of phrasing that made a question sound like this is the right thing or the good thing to be doing was occasionally difficult to rephrase in a way that was also succinct and precise.
Yeah, and I think just building off that, we recognize that like each community is unique. Each community has its own set of goals, aspirations, values, and its own baseline. So we really wanted it to be like this is a tool to help each community achieve its own personal goals, and not like here's a bullet point list of what you should do to achieve sustainability. It's like here's the reflection. What is your community? What is the baseline for your community? And then like, here's how we can help your community achieve its sustainability goals, recognizing that communities are diverse in terms of physical layout, single family homes, condos, and then also in terms of residents and owners, makeup of resident renters. So I really think that that was also a really big component in how we worded the questions, how we wrote the guidebook. It's again, not like a bullet point list of here's what you should do. It's, you know, here's some ideas. How can we push the envelope? How can we get your community to achieve its own goals?
So the capstone team has become HOA experts over the last year, if you guys like it or not. Who would have thought, right? Sustainability master's program, and you end up learning about HOAs. So if you guys could choose one indicator or topic based on all of your research and experience for evaluating the total health of the HOA community, the sort of what's the gear that turns all the other gears in the HOA world, what would you guys choose?
I'll start. I think something that's kind of funny about this project is that we came in with totally just like an environmental sustainability mindset. And the more we learned about HOAs, the more we realized that governance and community is really important. So I don't know if I'm allowed to pick two, but I would say the governance and community, because without good governance, you really can't implement sustainability practices. And yeah, you just need to, like, the HOA has to be well functioning, and there has to be really good communication and governance for successful implementation of sustainability or other upgrades.
Yeah, I would echo that, but I would also hammer home like financials is, as everyone knows, incredibly important. Because without the capital to do things, like, your hands are kind of tied. But that saying, if you have a strong community, like you and have the ability to get that collective buy-in, collective action, there are lots of sustainable techniques you can do to improve your community with a minimal budget.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer with one single answer. I mean, the engine that drives it is certainly financials, and without that, you're not able to properly implement or fund any sort of sustainability projects if you're constantly playing catch up or constantly trying to make sure you're just on sound ground in the first place. But the ability for the governance structure to leverage that change is also so important. So those things go so hand in hand. I don't know if it's really possible to decouple the two.
Yeah, it's a tough question, for sure. So awesome. One of the last questions that came in the chat was if there are any conferences where HOA folks regularly get together where this information can be shared. And the answer is sort of. We are actually, so the HOA industry has a trade organization called Community Associations Institute. Normally the organization has been a little bit more active with in-person events. Obviously the pandemic has challenged that, but we are still holding a spring/fall conference that is coming up in just a few weeks, where we'll be presenting on a variety of topics. Myself and Chris Kriegler will be presenting on HOA sustainability sort of in general as one of those classes. And, you know, hopefully in the future, we can sort of plug into that group a little bit further, to kind of bring a little bit more of this perspective to the industry at large. And I know since we do have a couple of HOA industry veterans, we'd love to hear any further thoughts or suggestions on, you know, how this fits into the industry at large, and anything you might recommend us do in the future.
Hey, Chris, David Graff.
I was hoping you'd come off mute, David.
Oh, geez. So I think Andy said it well. I think I get it. You know, one of the issues is that these boards will have to raise assessments continuously with a population of owners that will resist that. And to the extent that there's grants or a financial analysis saying that we can break even over so many years, you know, certain people will oppose the big brotherish idea of saving the environment, even if it costs them 50 cents more a month. But everybody agrees on saving money, and there's such extreme pressure, I think, to keep these assessments in line, that if we, to the extent you can, lead with the payoff, like water is just crazy. And you know, but the cost of getting rid of the irrigation system and putting in a xeriscape sometimes can, you know, it may pay off over a few years, but there's still this resistance. And for me, it's this, you know, we know what's right. And the question is, how do we prove the economics of these investments that will almost undoubtedly pay off over time? And that's just the conflict, I think, in this, is that we all want to do better, but these boards are under such pressure to keep assessments in line. So it takes a lot of courage, I think.
David, that's fascinating that you brought that up. It almost triggers a thought of, and I love it that within the scorecard survey, that transparency is really focused on, and the financial aspects are really focused on, in that order, transparency and the financials. Being that you kind of run into, at least I'm just speaking personally, I live up in Longmont. My HOA, the board is not in any way held accountable nor beholden to us residents to get the finances in order. I mean, yeah, they send out an annual financial statement, but there's no feedback loop, right? Like there's no, hey, if Tyler doesn't agree with how we're spending the finances, who does he talk to, and what are the accountability measures, you know, kind of thing. And so is my board here in Longmont, do they really care about $15,000 extra spent on water if they're not really held accountable to it, if it's not their problem? Because it kind of creates more work for them, you know? And so you run into that split incentive of, hey, again, who is the target market? Who are we focused on? Are we able to leverage the residents within our HOA to put pressure on those who they've elected, I guess you could say softly, you know, in perpetuity. So anyways.
Yeah, and as industry professionals, and I'm not trying to drag politics into this, do we see bright things on the horizon for additional grants and opportunities to partner with the government agencies such as yours to take some of the immediate sting out of these investments that I think will have to be made, particularly for water savings? Are we optimistic about the future here? I hope. Anyone?
Chris, I'll add just a little bit, and this is not an ad, but there are loans available, and there's certainly understanding community associations and being able to offset the savings that you anticipate with some of these projects to offset the really low interest rates is really a viable option right now. So if you're partnering with somebody who understands and you've got a plan for what's going to pay that back, maybe it's a combination of an expense to the association, but also some savings in a new irrigation system, things like that. That's certainly something an association can obtain a loan for. That's a really good option for them.
And just to add on to that as well, there's partnerships with like local utilities that can help defray those costs as well. Because I know Denver Water has a couple programs that help with if you're upgrading. EPA Water Sense is a program that helps with water infrastructure, and then I think Excel has what they call a home energy squad, where they'll do an energy audit of a building, and I think it's for free, but I'll have to double check. So yeah, even your local utilities have got programs that fly under the radar sometimes, but they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's an enormous opportunity for the HOA industry and municipalities to work towards more of these sort of public-private partnerships. I mean, if you look at the sort of history of HOAs and how it's been used as a development mechanism for growing cities, it's the sort of it allowed cities to grow quickly, right? Because it offloads so much of the infrastructure financing and development into the private sector. And, we're at the point where a lot of that infrastructure has been built. And, I think there's a huge opportunity there kind of waiting at that intersection to where the sort of two entities could come back together and really achieve a lot of these kind of bigger regional goals by working, in a different way than they have in the past. So yeah, I think this is perhaps a step, at least on many of the sustainability initiatives, into sort of, how can we amplify, the water savings example is great. That can be amplified and just expedited by working at these scales of, HOA communities, kind of more so than one-off efforts with other residentials. So yeah, I think Tyler and I have talked about that a bit, and I hope to continue the conversations. All right, everyone. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here pretty soon. So yeah, I'd just like to thank the Capstone team again for all of their work on this project. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you guys for the last year, and you're leaving us with an amazing deliverable, both in terms of the scorecard and the guidebook. For everyone else on the call, please stay in touch. We'll be sure to send out emails when we have our kind of new website up and running, where we have all of these resources available to you. So please feel free to share those with your fellow board members, community members, etc. And yeah, I guess, with that, you can look out for our next presentation on December 3rd with the CAI conference. And yeah, I think Capstone members, if there's any final words, so I'll hand it over to you guys, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
I just wanted to say that a lot of this project has been focusing on putting the energy where the momentum already exists. And there are always going to be the communities that push back against like sustainability measures. But it's about like finding those opportunities where people want to already get the ball rolling. So if that's a community that wants to work on their water conservation because it saves them money, that's great. It's still the means to the end that we want to get to, which is water conservation. And if there's a community that wants to, implement renewable energy to, reduce their carbon footprint, that's a whole nother situation. But figuring out what language each community speaks in, I think is the real key here. So using that model where you're not trying to push back against everybody, you're trying to find the momentum where everybody is putting it, will be just so much easier in the long run. So that's my piece.
Yeah, one last thing I would just say, when we started this project, we didn't really know anything about HOAs, so it's been a really fun learning experience for us, and we're really appreciative of all the board members and everyone in the industry that we've worked with for being welcoming and helping us learn. And it was a great opportunity to be able to teach each other about sustainability and the HOA industry. So with that, I would just say, thank you everyone for being here and for being a part of our mission, what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So we'll go ahead and wrap up with that. Thanks for the final words, Capstone team. And thanks again, everyone, for joining. And we will see you later.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.